So normally when I do these kinds of free-to-play card videos, they are always designed to show you guys replacements for all the popular expensive macro, like Book of Moon, Treacherous Trap Hole, Canadia, Floodgate, etc. for those of you that can't afford them. But this time around, this isn't actually the case. This card isn't just meant to be a substitute for free-to-play players to use. Everyone can use this. At only RARITY, this card in the current meta in tournament play is quite often played over the Ultra Rare and SR counterparts, and I'm not just talking in side decks. Now just before I get into the card, just a friendly reminder that if you do find this kind of content useful or would like to see more stuff from me, please press the like button down below and consider subscribing to the channel whilst you're down there. It's completely free and you can unsub at any time. Alright, so the card I'm talking about is called Stygian Dirge. I have no idea if this is how you pronounce it, I'm just kinda guessing.
Stygian Dirge.
What the fuck? This trap card simply reduces the levels of all monsters your opponent controls by 1. Now at first glance, this probably doesn't seem all that strong, right? And maybe a couple of metas ago, I probably would have agreed with you. It doesn't inherently remove anything, it doesn't place anything face down, it doesn't even lower the attack. So what exactly makes this card so strong currently? Well, let me ask you a quick question. If you had a trap card that read, your opponent can no longer synchro or exceed summon for the rest of the duel, would you play it? Well, when you check the current meta and you notice there is only one fusion deck currently being played, and quite literally every other deck can only synchro or exceed summon to be able to use their extra deck, the answer to that question is simple. Well, no shit I would use it. Well, guess what? That's effectively what Stygian does. You see, in Duel Links we only have 7 extra deck slots, and it can be kind of hard to fit anything into those slots that isn't already absolutely necessary. This means that your extra deck is extremely specific. So what Stygian does is it makes it so when your opponent goes for their standard combo to summon something from their extra deck, you adjust the levels of their materials before they can do so. And because their extra deck is extremely specific, quite often this means they're left with a bunch of awkward level materials that they can't actually summon anything with. Let me give you guys an example. Let's take Resonators, a deck which is currently considered the best deck in Duel Links according to the most well-known and used tier list, in both standard tier list and power rankings too. So to form a standard combo with this deck, you would summon a Crimson Resonator, which is a level 2 monster. Then you would summon a Wandering King Wildwind, which is a level 4 monster. Now with the level 2 tuner and a level 4 monster on the field, you'll be able to summon the level 6 monster Red Rising Dragon, and from there you would use its effect to go into whatever other extra deck stuff you like. But let's go back a bit to when you summon the Wildwind. If at this point your opponent activated a Stygian, your tuner monster would be a level 1, and your Wildwind a level 3, meaning the only synchro monster you can go into is a level 4. I'm going to tell you this right now. There ain't a single Resonator player on the planet right now playing a level 4 synchro in their extra deck. Their extra deck is so refined at this point, you're just not going to be seeing any glue eaters playing old entity cards in their deck. And this goes for every single synchro or exceeds deck currently being run. Harpies want to use 2 level 4s to make Slash? Nope. Onomats want to use 2 level 4s for Malevolent Sin? Nope. And keep in mind, this effect is continuous, meaning if that Resonator player in the previous example would summon another Wildwind, if the trap isn't removed, that card will also be changed to level 3. It might only be RARITY, it might only be one card, but if you get it off, it will permanently disable a ton of decks. Now before I hype up this card too much, let me briefly go through the downsides as well, so you're aware of them. Now like I said, this trap card is a continuous effect, which in some cases makes it a lot stronger as it's permanent. But it also means the effect can be effectively cancelled quite easily. If your opponent activates any standard back row removal, such as a Cosmic or a Mystical Space Typhoon, it will effectively negate the card, and since it didn't actually remove anything like a Karma card or a Treacherous would have, your opponent can then just kind of play the game as if nothing happened. Although, I know I'm meant to be talking about downsides here, but since it is a continuous effect, if you activate in response to a Hatronade, it won't be returned to hand, effectively making this card a very decent counter to it, and an even greater counter to Resonators. Another major downside I've noticed with this card is against skills, more specifically, Shark Skill Territory of the Sharks. Now normally against Xyz decks, this card is a decent counter, as it changes the levels of the materials, making Xyz summoning to the desired cards not possible. But if you stumble across a Water Exceeds deck, you're gonna have a bit of an issue. You see, when you activate a skill, your opponent does not get a chance to respond to the activation. And when a level is adjusted by a skill, it will take priority, and this is very important to note. So if your opponent gets 2 water monsters on the board and activates his skill, you do not get a chance to activate Stygian before your opponent can Exceed Summon. For example, your opponent summons a Deep Sea Diva and uses this effect to summon an Atlantean Heavy Infantry. Your opponent will then activate Territory of the Sharks, making all these monsters level 4, and you do not get a chance to respond to this, meaning you cannot activate your set Stygian to reduce the levels. You can just freely Exceed Summon to his heart's content. Now you could activate Stygian when he summons the Atlantean, but it won't mean anything, as like I said, skills always take priority. So once he activates the skill, his monsters will still be level 4, even if the continuous effect of Stygian is currently active. And the final major downside of using Stygian is pretty obvious. It just doesn't work in every matchup. If your opponent is playing something like Cyber Dragon, which does not give a flying fuck about the levels of its monsters and just wants to fusion summon, the trap is going to be worthless. If you're up against a deck like Senju, which can go into the extra deck, but doesn't really need to, the trap isn't very effective over something like a Treacherous. And sometimes the trap will still be bad even in matchups where it's theoretically okay. For example, I personally played against a Thunder Dragon player and activated it to avoid my opponent summoning an M7 using 2 level 6s. He then proceeded to just summon an Armageddon with the 2 level 5s and OTK'd my ass. But after saying all this and going through all these downsides, it's still pretty clear this card is extremely powerful in current meta. Don't believe me? Just go into DLM real quick and browse through all the current tournament decks running this card, with a bunch of them simply choosing to just main deck it. If you find yourself running low on back row due to budgeting and can't afford some of the higher tier trap cards, remember, this card is an option. If you're struggling to counter some decks such as Resonators or just really hate Hatronade, remember, this card does exist. Now I'm going to leave you guys now with one replay of me showcasing the card being used for those of you that just want to see it in action. Remember, if you do find this kind of content useful or would like to see more stuff like it, to please press the like button down below, and consider subscribing whilst you're down there. Enjoy the gameplay!
Duel.
Hey, big brother, can I watch SpongeBob?
Shut up, Mokuba. I'm busy flagging YouTube videos to compensate for the fact that I have an extremely small penis.
Oh.